Last week, I paid taxes on my coffee, not the coffee beans. Those were already taxed. The paper cup, the plastic lid, different tax. The store's Wi-Fi I used while drinking it, believe it or not, taxed. And also treated like a closely guarded state secret, begrudgingly given out by the barista. By the time I finished calculating, my $3 coffee had generated 9 different tax events. And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. And suddenly, my coffee situation seemed reasonable.
Did you know Peter the Great of Russia once taxed beards? If you wanted to keep your facial hair in 1698, you paid the government for the privilege. They even gave you a little copper token to prove you'd paid your beard tax.
Imagine getting carded for your mustache. Honestly, if Peter the Great saw today's beard scene, he'd bring the tax back and make multiples. I'm Jenny, and today we're exploring history's strangest taxes, the bizarre, creative, and sometimes desperate ways governments have tried to fill their treasuries. From windows to wigs, playing cards to urine, we're discovering what happens when human creativity sets its sights on separating people from their money. The world's intriguing taxes. The beard tax, Russia, 1698. Let's start with Peter the Great's beard tax because it perfectly captures the absurdity that we're dealing with. Peter wanted Russia to modernize and look more European. Europeans were clean-shaven. Solution? Tax the beards off. The tax varied by social class. Wealthy nobles and merchants paid substantial sums in rubles, while peasants paid smaller fees when entering cities.
If you paid, you got a beard token that read "tax paid" with a picture of a beard. You literally carried beard paperwork.
And the wildest part, police could forcibly shave anyone who couldn't produce their beard receipt. Yes, there were police barbers. Honestly, it was probably a pretty fun unit, except when situations got a little hairy. We're talking beards, people. I can do dad jokes. The tax lasted until 1772, meaning Russia had professional beard police for 74 years.
But here's what's fascinating. It worked. Russian nobility started shaving to avoid the tax and fit in with European fashion. You guys, Peter the Great was literally the fashion police.
The window tax. Britain, 1696 to 1851. If beard tax seems weird, Britain's window tax reshaped actual buildings. From 1696 to 1851, British homes were taxed based on their number of windows. Yes, there was actually a tax on sunshine, sort of. The government needed money to fund an expensive state, especially during recurring wars, often against France. So, rather than asking people to declare their income or wealth, which 18th century, hard to verify, they chose a visible and easy to measure indicator of wealth, the number of windows in a house. More windows generally meant a larger house, which meant the owner was wealthier and could afford to pay more. I guess that makes sense, though a monocle tax or a tax on the word indubitably seems more straightforward. The result, people bricked up their windows. You can still see the outlines on old British buildings today. Ghost windows, permanently closed to avoid taxes. The phrase daylight robbery is often claimed to come from this tax, though the actual origin is disputed. Health reformers and physicians linked the tax to resulting problems with poor light and ventilation in working class housing. The tax was finally repealed in 1851, replaced by the house tax,
a sliding scale based on the actual home value instead of, say, the number of doorknobs.
The story about French doors being created to avoid window taxes, that's actually considered a myth by historians. People did get creative with tax avoidance in other ways. Fake windows painted on walls, and lots of elaborate legal arguments about what constituted a window versus a ventilation opening. The playing card tax, multiple countries.
Here's one that spread globally. Playing card taxes. England started in 1588, and the idea caught on everywhere. The Ace of Spades became the tax stamp card.
That's why, even today, the Ace of Spades is usually the fanciest card in the deck. It was the first card in the deck, and each deck needed a stamped one as a receipt of tax payment. To combat counterfeiting, the government started printing the Ace of Spades with very detailed official design, sometimes featuring the royal coat of arms or elaborate patterns, thus making it harder to forge. And yes, forging the duty stamp on the Ace of Spades could be a capital offense in England. The most famous case of this was for a man named Richard Harding, who was sentenced for it in 1805. France taxed cards from 1583 to 1945. The American colonies had playing cards that contributed to revolution tensions. Japan taxed Hanafuda cards. Basically, if you could gamble with it, someone tried to tax it. A real bummer if you're like me and you only want to play goldfish. The hat tax, Britain, 1784 to 1811.
Britain really loved weird taxes. The hat tax of 1784 required all hats to have a tax stamp inside. Hat makers who forged the stamp
fined. Forging hat duty stamps? That could also be a capital offense. The public response was creative. They stopped buying hats and started buying head coverings that technically weren't hats. So like this,
Technically, it's a bucket, but in tax terms, not a hat.
the legal definition of hat became so complicated that the tax was eventually abandoned. You can't effectively tax something you can't define. Reminds me of that famous Marguerite painting. Ancient Rome's urine tax. And when you reach surrealism when talking about taxation, it's probably time to move on to a wee little tax. Or a little wee tax, more accurately. Brace yourselves.
Ancient Rome had a urine tax. Emperor Vespasian taxed the collection of urine from public toilets. Why? Because urine was valuable, used for tanning, leather laundering, and even teeth whitening.
Yes, you heard that right. Probably didn't want to hear that, but it's too late now for all of us. When Vespasian's son complained the tax was disgusting, the emperor held up a gold coin from the tax revenue and asked if it smelled bad.
The phrase pecunia non olet, money doesn't stink, comes from this moment.
Okay, I think I need to wash my hands after that segment. The wallpaper tax. Britain, 1712 to 1836. Not content with taxing windows and hats, Britain decided to tax wallpaper, printed wallpaper specifically. The response? People bought plain paper and hand-stenciled patterns. If ever a law was secretly passed by 5-year-olds, this was it. But this legitimately revolutionized interior design. Stenciling techniques, which were developed to avoid the tax, became fashionable on their own. Tax avoidance accidentally created an art movement. Modern strange taxes.
You might think we've outgrown weird taxes, but modern governments can be just as creative. And yes, these are all real and currently in effect.
New York State treats sliced or prepared bagels as taxable prepared food, while whole unsliced bagels are generally tax-exempt groceries. The moment of slicing changes the tax category. Not a problem for me because I always travel the streets of New York with this. Since 2019, Switzerland has a household media fee collected by Serafe. You pay for the ability to receive broadcasts, whether you own devices or not. And the US city of Chicago still applies a 9% amusement tax to streaming services. It started in 2015 and continues today. There's a cow flatulence tax, which has nothing to do with the odor. Gassy livestock are an unfortunate contributor of climate-unfriendly methane. So, cow owners in Ireland and Denmark must pay up. Wouldn't want to be the arbiter of that one. The candy tax wars. Some of the weirdest modern tax battles are over candy. Many American states, using standardized tax definitions, treat candy containing flour differently from candy without flour. A chocolate-covered pretzel may not be, but a plain chocolate bar, often taxed. The legal arguments over what constitutes flour has sparked years of rulemaking and tax guidance, and the occasional lawsuit.
Illinois had to legally define candy versus food for tax purposes. The 2009 definition was 5 pages long. 5 pages to explain the tax difference between a cookie and a candy bar. Lawyers were involved. It was serious.
The strangest part isn't the taxes themselves, it's how they shaped culture, architecture, even language in ways nobody predicted. Conclusion. So, what do we learn from history's weird taxes? Governments will tax anything they can define. People will find creative ways around any tax they can't avoid, and sometimes the side effects are more interesting than the revenue. Every strange tax tells a story about what societies value, fear, or desperately need money for. Beer taxes reveal cultural anxieties. Window taxes show the limits of indirect wealth assessment. And modern bagel slicing taxes? They mostly reveal how far Jenny will go to save a dime.
At Remitly, we help people send money across borders where it often faces various taxes and fees. Understanding the history of creative taxation helps us appreciate why transparent, predictable costs matter. As for my 9 times taxed coffee, well, I counted not a single gentleman in this establishment was beard or stubble free, and at least they weren't taxed for them. So we'll count that as progress.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more content that tackles topics that I think are worth discussing. Drop a comment with what you'd like to see next. I'm always up for covering something new.